Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. One of the common phrases that you'll hear whenever people discuss quarterbacks in the Cleveland Browns and what we should do at the quarterback position for now and the future is this question of getting Kevin Stefanski what he wants, right? Get him the quarterback that he wants. And there is a problem with that question because that question is asked. And then I'll go ahead and operate with that question as if there is a clear answer that's been provided. But when you really look into the history of Kevin Stefanski, the more and more you dig, the more and more you question if you actually know what this guy wants at quarterback. Because it is more of a mystery than I think some people let it on to be. Kevin Stefanski, throughout his career as an offensive coordinator and a head coach, has had an extended history with three quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins, who he inherited from the last offensive coordinator, got fired mid-season in 2018. Baker Mayfield, who he inherited from the last Browns regime that he took over for. And then Deshaun Watson, who it's widely understood that Jimmy Haslam pushed to bring into Cleveland. It wasn't necessarily the choice of Kevin Stefanski. Now, we usually default to Kirk Cousins is what Kevin Stefanski wants as a quarterback because he was able to have a good amount of success with Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins was better with Kevin than he's ever been in his career, right? He has a 12-6 record with Kevin Stefanski. That's a 66 win percentage. That's plus 14 up from his career win percentage of 518. He had about 4,230 yards in his 18 starts with Kevin Stefanski, about 233 yards a game, 33 touchdowns in his 18 starts with Kevin, about 2 touchdowns per game per 17. Yeah, 2 touchdowns per game, not per 17, but 2 touchdowns per game. 10 total turnovers, 3 fumbles lost, 7 interceptions. That goes for about a half a turnover a game. And a 107.5 rate, which is up 10.1 points from his career rate of 97.4. So because there is this elevation of success with Kirk Cousins and in a smaller vacuum with late stage Joe Flacco, we assume that that is what Kevin's quarterback of choice tends to be. But when you dig into Kirk Cousins, it's not like Kevin recruited Kirk Cousins to come to Minnesota and then became the offensive coordinator there. It's more consequential than that, right? It's more of a coincidence than that. The same thing with Joe Flacco, right? The Browns weren't trying to go to Joe Flacco to end the 2023 season. If you remember, there was a real push by the Browns to start Dorian Thompson-Robinson for the rest of the season once Deshaun Watson went out for the year. It wasn't until they got a call from Gary Kubiak to Kevin Stefanski, and he recommended bring in Joe Flacco on an emergency basis, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson got hurt, and then Joe Flacco played the rest of the season so well that he couldn't be replaced at that point, that they stuck with Joe. But he was never the plan. Joe Flacco was never the plan at quarterback. The closest thing that we have to a Kevin Stefanski picked quarterback is maybe Jacoby Brissett, right? Who was brought in to start while Deshaun Watson was suspended. But it's worth noting when they signed Jacoby Brissett for that role, the Browns were under the false impression, but the impression nonetheless, that Deshaun Watson's suspension would not be more than 4 to 6 games. They did not anticipate, nor did they think Deshaun Watson's suspension would be 11 games that it ended up. So it's hard to really project whether or not Jacoby Brissett is a good foil for what they want at quarterback. And it's worth noting that Jacoby Brissett was brought in to primarily be a backup. And what you look to be a backup quarterback is not going to be the same thing as what you look for a starting quarterback. If you need more proof of that, look at the fact that Lamar Jackson's backup is Cooper Rush. Like, you talk about looking for two completely different things from those two positions, right? Backup quarterback and starting quarterback. Lamar Jackson, and then the backup is Cooper Rush. My point is, you can't really glean much on what Kevin wants out the starting quarterback position based on the backup quarterback position. Sometimes you want somebody who can emulate what the starter can do so you can translate as much of the offense as you can. Sometimes you might just want somebody who can run because that adds an extra dimension to your offense. Sometimes you just might want somebody who can run a base offense. So that means that you go with a Cooper Rush or something like that if Lamar Jackson goes down. Backup quarterback decisions get made for a lot of different reasons that aren't related to what you would do at the starting quarterback position. And when we look at the quarterbacks that Kevin has been around and has had to start with, these aren't quarterbacks in any case that he's ever chosen. He did not choose Baker Mayfield. He was not on the team when Baker Mayfield got selected number 1 overall. He inherited Baker Mayfield and had to work with what Baker Mayfield has to offer. The same is true with Kirk Cousins. He did not sign Kirk Cousins or recruit Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins was simply the starting quarterback with a big contract when he took over as the offensive coordinator in Minnesota, which meant that that's who he had to work with. Same thing with Deshaun Watson. He didn't pick Deshaun Watson, but ownership did, and that meant that Kevin had to work with whatever it is that Deshaun Watson has to offer. So when we go to this idea of arguing about what it is that Kevin wants in the system, I think we should be more open to the idea or to the fact that we really don't know what Kevin wants at the position, because he's never been put in a position to go out and grab somebody, right? He's always inherited a quarterback from some situation or has had a quarterback placed in front of him and been told to figure it out. We don't know what his preferences are at the quarterback position. We don't know what he prefers at the quarterback position. This is why, I try not to get too deep into the whole, I don't think this guy fits Kevin's thing, or this is a quarterback that Kevin wants, even with somebody who does not match what I believe Kevin's principles on offense to be in Cam Ward. It is very possible that there's something in Cam that Kevin sees and he really wants to work with, because we really don't know what Kevin sees and what Kevin wants to work with at the quarterback position. He's had fine work with some quarterbacks, other quarterbacks he's not had fine work with, right? And I think we judge a lot of this based on the fact that he had good work with Kirk Cousins. When I look at Kevin and when I try to judge what he would want at the quarterback position, understanding that there's not a lot of information on that, I try to think about what are the principles of his system, or the projected principles of his system, based on the kind of plays they run, the kind of concepts that they like to run, the kind of actions that they like to go to, and see what kind of quarterback suits that, right? We talked about it. Wide zone. A lot of that is about second level manipulation and safety manipulation. It's about moving linebackers, moving safeties. So there are some things that are important in that kind of a system. If we're looking at quarterback styles, I think this type of offense tends to favor a game manager versus a gunslinger. Now, this distinction can get muddy because a million people have their definition of a gunslinger and a million people have their definition of a game manager. When I say a gunslinger, I mean somebody who's going to prioritize explosive plays over situational football, right? So, for example, if a quarterback drops back and they got a wide open lane here to throw a 5-yard hook over the middle of the field, very completable pass to a tight end on first down, and they're likely to complete that and they're likely to choose that, that means they're more of a game manager style. Now, on that same play, if there's a 9 route on the back side of the play, so a streak or a go route on the back part of the play, and there's a one-on-one matchup and the safety might be hedging on one side or the other, and that pulls that quarterback's attention, And that tends to be something that happens more often. Basically, if a quarterback is willing to take more risk in very high leverage situations in the football game, then that can make them more of a gunslinger than a game manager, where a game manager prioritizes managing the game when it comes to what down is it? What do we need right now? Do we turn the ball over? Are we safe with the football? All of those things. Now, all game managers have to gunsling a little bit, right? You can't go down 14 and just keep throwing checkdowns. And all gunslingers have to game manage a little bit. You can't just throw bombs all day and survive in the NFL. It's not a great strategy. So there's a spectrum, right? Where do you exist on this spectrum? Are you more of a gunslinger? Are you more of a game manager? And where do you sit comfortably in that spectrum? And I think this offense prefers somebody who sits more in that game manager side of that spectrum than in that gunslinger side of that spectrum. Kirk Cousins is a good example of this. Now, most people look at Kirk Cousins and think to themselves, oh, yeah, that's a game manager. He's super far over in the game manager spectrum. Not really. Kirk Cousins takes a lot of weird risk in football games pretty routinely throughout his career. Like, he will throw a million checkdowns to Ray McLeod, no doubt. Like, he's going to throw a million checkdowns if he's your quarterback. But he also will just decide to try to fit a ball into a tight window in triple coverage for absolutely no reason. And that's part of Kirk Cousins too, right? Again, nobody's 100% a game manager. Nobody's 100% a gunslinger. Everybody has to do a little bit of both. Kirk's biggest problem throughout his career is that when he has had to be a gunslinger, he makes really poor decisions that usually turn into turnovers more often than not. He's just not very good at working with that part of the spectrum that you have to work with, but he is good enough with the game managing stuff that he can get you to a pretty high baseline. And I think that's what we mean when we say Kirk Cousins is the type of quarterback that Kevin prefers, a kind of quarterback where you can get to a baseline. Joe Flacco is very similar to Kirk Cousins, right? Where Joe Flacco will manage the game for a little while, but he will decide to just throw some nonsense in the middle of a game, and maybe it's completed, maybe it's not, but there's a little bit of that gunslinger there with Joe Flacco. He's just a veteran enough quarterback to understand how to manage the game to get you to a baseline, as long as his physical ability to do that can hold up, which at 40, not much of a guarantee there. A lot of what West Coast offenses are, and a lot of what Kevin Stefanski tries to do at quarterback, is about establishing a baseline, which is why I think that instead of physical traits and physical similarities to quarterbacks that we have seen work in Kevin's systems before, we should really look at some mental traits to try to project what could work in Kevin's offense. Number one mental trait, I think it's important for a quarterback in this offense: concentration. It is the most underrated quarterback trait of all of the quarterback traits. And I believe it to be one of the most important traits for a quarterback. Here's what I mean by concentration. How well can you focus on the plan? How hard is it to deviate you from the plan? If you see something shiny on the outside of the field and you want to throw a risky football, how much does it take to get you to throw that football or not throw that football? The one thing Tom Brady was brilliant at that a lot of quarterbacks could never match is Tom Brady had the concentration of, I don't even know what to compare it to, right? But he had some of the best concentration skills of all time because he would not be deterred from the plan. If the plan for Tom Brady was to throw underneath all game and take what the defense gives you, Tom Brady will be disciplined and concentrated to do exactly that, and you're not going to get him to deviate from the game plan. And once you do deviate from your game plan to try to attack what Tom's doing, then that's when Tom kills you, right? He's going to do what he's supposed to do. A lot of quarterbacks have an issue with concentration. They don't want to do the boring thing all game. They don't want to do what's successful all game because they want to do other things. I bet a lot of you at home watching this video has experienced what I'm talking about, not through being elite quarterbacks or playing football, but by playing Madden or college football, one of the video games that EA Sports puts out. Because how many times have you been playing against the computer, you've been whooping the computer, running 3 or 4 plays, and then in the second half, you get tired of that and you start trying to run all kind of different plays because you want to have more fun. Right. And what does that usually lead to? You throwing a bunch of interceptions at the computer and then getting really mad at Madden and rage quitting. That happens so much. Like, I know it happens a ton when I play online, at least with College Football 25, because like every time, like some kid would get up, like, because every comeback I've ever had in that video game, some kid would get up like 14 points, start losing discipline, losing concentration, losing focus, start trying a bunch of other stuff. And the next thing I know, I win the game because like I just came back just doing what I wanted to do. Concentration matters, right? And we all have understood how you can lose focus or lose concentration at the quarterback position, even if it's through a virtual proxy, like a video game, right? So I think that's like the number one skill you need to look for a quarterback for Kevin Stefanski. Does this guy have the ability to concentrate at a high level? Or do they look like they easily lose focus? That is one of my concerns with Cam, right? I think he easily loses focus. Sometimes with Shedeur, it looks like he loses focus a little bit more than I would like, right? You want a quarterback who can stay focused and is not going to deviate from the plan because it's boring. That takes a lot of concentration. Another thing I think this offense needs is coachability, because this is a coach-heavy offense, right? Some offenses aren't very coach-heavy. You look at Joe Burrow's offense in Cincinnati, it is very player-heavy. It's very much allowing Joe to do what he wants, see the play how he wants, and work through the play how he wants. It's not Zach Taylor standing there telling him, hey, this is what we're looking for. We're going to work through all of these and then you're going to hit back here. Like, it's not as structured as like the Browns offense is, which is more structured. The more structured the offense, the more coachable you need that quarterback to be. Now, how can you tell if somebody's coachable? It's very subjective. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's hard to tell from 1,000 feet away, like we are sitting, when we're not in any of these programs, understanding what these players are being told to do and told to see. One way of being able to determine this: how much does a player like to play in structure versus not playing structure? That gives you a baseline of if a player is very coachable or not. Doesn't determine it at all. There are some players who like to play structure who are very coachable. Pat Mahomes is a big example of that. He's an outlier for sure, but Pat Mahomes is an example of somebody who likes to break structure and is very coachable. But coachability, I think, is very important here, especially in this offense, for those specific reasons. The last thing I think a player needs to be able to do is create gravity. Now, you can create gravity by being a great athlete. You can create gravity by having a tremendous arm, and you can create gravity by having a tremendous mind, right? Tom Brady, another example of a quarterback who created gravity with just their mind, was able to do this by small stuff, right? There's that story of Tom hitching his feet just 2 steps to the left to move a linebacker out the way and then turning his hips back towards the center of the field to unleash a ball right where that linebacker was. It's using your mind to create gravity. No, you're not an athlete. No, you're not going to be able to make this guy overreact to you running or anything like that. No, you're not going to be able to just throw this ball faster than that guy can get there like a Pat Mahomes can or somebody with a cannon of an arm can, but you can manipulate them with your mind. And then athletes, obviously, the ability to run is the most pressing threat for a defensive player. If you ask any defensive player, especially any linebacker, secondary player, who the best quarterbacks in football are, I promise you, like, all of them run. Like, they don't like playing against those dudes who can run. Those are defenders' worst nightmares because those are really hard players to play defense against. Why? Because the running ability of a quarterback constantly puts them in conflict. Jalen Hurts constantly puts pressures on linebackers and DBs, because if you're in man coverage and you're a defensive back and you don't check what's back there to see if Jalen Hurts done left, you could do all the good coverage in the world. Jalen Hurts got 40 yards. Lamar Jackson went off for 80, right? He's gone touchdown. If you ever ask defensive players who they think are the hardest players to defend, they're going to tell you all of these quarterbacks who can run, because those are the guys who give them nightmares that you can't even plan for, right? So runners, thinkers, arm guys, those are the guys who can create gravity. Now, I tend to think the best way to create gravity in this kind of a system is to either be a mind guy or an athlete, right? Be able to move somebody with your legs. I think that's where the evolution of the wide zone, play action heavy offense is going towards. So when we ask ourselves the question, what does Kevin want at the quarterback position? What does he want if he drafts a quarterback this year, 2026, 2027? We have to be open to the idea that maybe this guy doesn't look like a carbon copy of Kirk Cousins. Maybe Kevin wants something different at the quarterback position for different reasons. And we have to be open to the idea that we don't really know what it is that Kevin wants at the quarterback position. So we can't just assume if they draft this quarterback or that quarterback that it was or was not Kevin, because we don't know what it is that he wants. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.